Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and recently I read Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. And if you own a recent printing of this book, it probably has this gold sticker on it, advertising the fact that Ishiguro won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Now, I know people don't love fake stickers on their book covers, but as someone that once wished they could put their Call of Duty rank on their resume, I think I'll give Ishiguro a pass for a Nobel Prize. So the book Never Let Me Go is told from the perspective of a student at a mysterious school in England. And it's this melancholic coming-of-age story, but also set against the backdrop of this unsettling larger world. And I won't give any spoilers, but I think this could be considered a work of dystopian fiction as well as science fiction. And this got me thinking, how many science fiction authors have won the Nobel Prize in Literature? Starting in 1901, the Swedish Academy has awarded this prize to the author who has, in the field of literature, produced the most outstanding work in an idealistic direction. And while this is subjective, the Nobel Prize is arguably the most prestigious award in literature, and it also comes with a cash prize of 11 million Swedish krona, which is over $1 million US. Since 1901, the award has been presented to 121 individual authors, and according to the Science Fiction Encyclopedia, 26 of these authors have written some form of science fiction. So I went through each of their bibliographies, and none of these authors are primarily known for science fiction, and around 10 of them, I would say, you have to use a somewhat broad definition of the genre in order to consider their work science fiction. Of the rest, a majority did write something that was definitively science fiction, but it wasn't one of their most famous works. The Nobel Prize isn't awarded to a single piece of writing, but rather an author's entire body of work. So these pieces of science fiction did contribute to their Nobel Prize, but it may not have been a significant factor. So of the 26 writers on this list, I found 5 authors where science fiction was one of their most famous pieces of work. And these were Hermann Hesse with The Glass Bead Game, Harry Martinson with Anyara, Jose Saramago with Blindness, Doris Lessing with her Canopus in Argos series, and Kazuo Ishiguro with Never Let Me Go. Let me know if you've read any of these, as the only one that I've read is Never Let Me Go. And now that I have read it, the question is, did I think it was Nobel Prize worthy? Well, first of all, you can tell within a chapter that Ishiguro is a strong writer. This book has a slice-of-life feel to it, and as someone that is typically drawn to big sci-fi ideas, this isn't always my personal favorite style of story. But Ishiguro just has such a strong command of tone and atmosphere that helps bring simple settings to life, and I felt like every interaction was just brimming with emotion and subtext. The entire book, I was feeling this push-pull between moments of sweetness but with impending sadness, and these moments of despair that still had beautiful silver linings. Never Let Me Go also captures the essence of young friendships. The way that these friendships being formed are depicted, as well as the fights that are being had, are incredibly relatable, sometimes even painfully so. The book is split into 3 parts with small time jumps in between them, and I love the first part, but I will say that the second part started to drag just a little for me in terms of the plot progression and exploration of the wider world. Ultimately, I think this is just a more character-focused story. The characters in this book are well developed, and I did care for them, but at times I did feel just a little bit indifferent towards the main character, Kathy, and I think that reduced the emotional impact that this book had on me. I can see why people love this book, and character-first readers may enjoy the personal approach to the storytelling. For me, I like science fiction authors that balance the micro with the macro. I really like the old sci-fi approach of these big what-if questions, or if this, what next? And I just don't think Ishiguro quite squeezed all of the juice out of this premise. However, I still really enjoyed the book overall, and while this might not be my personal favorite approach to science fiction, I can see why this contributed to winning the Nobel Prize. Now, the only other Ishiguro book that I've read is Klara and the Sun, which was released in 2021, which was 4 years after he won the Nobel Prize in 2017. Klara and the Sun is more overtly science fiction, with the main character being an android that serves as an artificial friend. The The book shares some of the same writing strengths as Never Let Me Go, but I cared a lot more about the characters in Klara and the Sun, so it had a greater emotional impact on me. To be honest, I spent almost every chapter of this book just trying not to cry. I also liked the science fiction elements more, as while some things do remain mysterious or go unanswered, I really enjoyed getting to see the world through Klara's eyes, both physically and philosophically. I think this is one of the best depictions of an android in literature because of the way that we get to explore the humanity as well as the machinery that is present within Klara. However, the ending is a little open-ended for my tastes. Never Let Me Go does a better job of answering most of your questions, whereas the ending of Klara and the Sun is more open to interpretation. And maybe that's a good thing, because I did actually spend a lot of time researching theories after I finished reading the book, and there is one theory that I think works really well narratively. You just have to jump over a couple of plot holes to get there. Regardless, I thought this was a fantastic book, and while it didn't contribute to Ishiguro winning the Nobel Prize, to me it's evidence of his writing ability being Nobel Prize worthy. Let me know if you've read any of his non-science fiction books like The Remains of the Day or The Buried Giant, and if you enjoyed them. So, seeing as only 5 authors with prominent works of science fiction have been awarded the Nobel Prize, does that mean I think they're being discriminated against? Because there's this stigma that genre fiction, including fantasy, horror, or science fiction, isn't real literature. For example, many publishers weren't publishing science fiction novels until the 1950s. Science fiction authors had to get their stories published in magazines in order to get their work out there through that format instead. On the one hand, 5 authors out of 121 Nobel Prize winners isn't actually that bad a percentage. If you consider all the genres across all of literature, science fiction might actually be around 4% of that population, so that number would be proportional. On the other hand, it would be nice to see an author actually known for science fiction win the prize. If a science fiction author is going to win the Nobel Prize, I think it's going to have to be for soft science fiction, as I believe hard science fiction to be a smaller niche. And I think their books are going to have to break out of the realm of just science fiction readers and into the mainstream. So if I were to pick one author that didn't win the Nobel Prize that I think deserved one, it would have to be Kurt Vonnegut. Vonnegut wrote a number of successful novels, short story collections, plays, and essays, with some of his most influential works including Slaughterhouse-Five and Cat's Cradle. Within science fiction, he was nominated for the Hugo, Nebula, Locus, and John W. Campbell Awards, as well as being inducted into the Science Fiction Hall of Fame. More broadly, he was also nominated for the National Book Award, received a Guggenheim Fellowship, and was inducted into the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Kurt Vonnegut used both science fiction and satire to explore the human condition, most notably in relation to war, free will, technology, morality, and alienation. I don't know if I can describe Kurt Vonnegut's writing as optimistic, but I do believe he had a positive impact on his readers, encouraging kindness, empathy, creativity, and humor. And if that doesn't deserve a Nobel Prize, then I don't know what does. So there you go, I think science fiction is worthy of the Nobel Prize in Literature. And if you're wondering, why does this even matter? Well, to the author, they might like that $1 million. And to the readers, I think if a science fiction author has something worthy to say, then the more promotion and recognition that book gets, the more people will hear about it and read it, and I think that's a good thing. Let me know some of your favorite science fiction authors that you think were also worthy of this prize. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash or just gently click the subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, consider checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, where you can become one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs, like Nima and New Eden, Half-Ogre, Zakawe, Samil, and the Nobel Colin. And you can find more sci-fi content over here.